Can I call you June?
You can call me whatever you like. Take a bucket of piss and call it Granny's peach tea.
This is blasphemy. This is madness.
Madness? This is Snyder. In the age of the internet, Batman v Superman was perhaps the most scrutinized pre-production in history, with one other recent possible exception.
It will haunt you every night. Whatever it is, no one should have to encounter that kind of evil. Except you girls, I think you can handle it.
Oh, good. Thanks.
It all started with the divisive response to Man of Steel. Then it continued to blow up with the casting of Ben Affleck, then Gal Gadot, then Jesse Eisenberg.
Ding, 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 ding.
How did it get to this point? In June of 2013, Man of Steel 2 was announced, and Zack Snyder and David S. Goyer would be putting it together. A month later, it was revealed the movie would introduce a new Batman and be the first live-action film to show Batman and Superman on screen together. The film would be strongly inspired by Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, but would be an original story. In December of that year, Chris Terrio was brought in to rewrite David S. Goyer's script because Goyer was busy with other projects and was unable to finish. The film was set to not only introduce a new Batman, but also a new Alfred Pennyworth, Wonder Woman, Cyborg, Flash, and Aquaman. Warner Brothers were making it clear that this movie was meant to jumpstart the DC Extended Universe and put it on par with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Despite a lot of the fan outrage, the movie's production was relatively smooth. It was even given an extra year to be worked on, so it won't end up competing with Avengers 2. But the movie proved not to be nearly as solid as the production would imply.
It's cherry.
Wonder Woman is completely pointless in this movie. Think about it. What's the first thing she does? She steals the data that Batman hacked off of Lex's drive. What does she do with it?
I believe Mr. Luthor is a photograph that belongs to me.
Did you get it?
As it happens, no, I didn't. The data you copied is military-grade encryption. You'll find it in the glove compartment of your car.
So that's a complete time sink. Next, we have her checking our email and looking at data Batman sent her. This is all stuff we could have seen Batman do, so another time sink. Then we have the Doomsday battle, where shockingly, she ends up with the best shots fighting Doomsday, which is cool, but it also feels like an injustice to Superman. But in the end, her only real contribution was tying up Doomsday with her lasso so Superman can stab him, which is something that could have been done with Batman and his last kryptonite grenade. Actually, her involvement in the final battle makes Superman's sacrifice completely pointless. I can see a scenario where Superman would bite the bullet and risk himself if it were just him and Batman battling Doomsday, but with Wonder Woman clearly being able to go mano-a-mano with the creature, why not give the kryptonite spear to her? Does that make too much sense in this movie?
I've killed things from other worlds before.
She with you?
I thought she was with you.
Seriously, Batman, she's clearly with you.
It's cherry.
I feel like we've missed a nice chunk of Batman's story here. While they do make a huge effort to make sure Batman's origin is a huge component to this story, it does feel like they're skipping a lot of steps with him. First of all, we get a little Easter egg in the form of the armor that's probably supposed to be Robin's, which is a reference to Death in the Family, because apparently that's a story that no one wanted to ever see on film, so they're just going to skip past that. But we also see that for some reason Wayne Manor appears to be overgrown and in ruins. I have no idea why this is. It doesn't contribute anything to the story, it's just something that's there for some reason.
You're a fucking nerd. You're a fucking nerd. And no one likes you.
The only reason I think of to have Wayne Manor in shambles is to reference The Dark Knight. But the only reason it was in shambles during The Dark Knight was because it burned down in the previous movie. Since there is no previous movie to speak of here, I don't know what they're referencing or why we've skipped these events.
It just raises too many questions.
It's cherry.
Easily the most famous Superman story arc of all time, and it just ends up as practically a footnote at the end of this movie. When Doomsday was revealed to be here, I thought it was a shame to use him without doing the Death of Superman story arc. Little did I realize that they would do that arc very quickly and haphazardly. There's no build-up to Superman's death, and the whole idea that he needed to die to find his place in humanity is just nonsense, especially since if he never came to this planet, there would be no Zod or Doomsday. In the comic book, his battle with Doomsday was epic and stretched across towns and cities. Here, it's just on this little island and lasts for only a couple minutes of screen time. The comic book made it one of the most epic battles Superman has ever done, and here it feels very subpar compared to the Zod battle he had at the end of Man of Steel.
Lame.
Superman dies here because he's Superman, not because he found his place, and humanity accepting him feels so forced. If they didn't accept him before, why now after a big Kryptonian creature again caused destruction to the world? After all, it was a Kryptonian causing destruction that first caused humanity to question him, and now that it's happened again, they're all okay with him just because he died? That just doesn't sync up. The movie clearly is just throwing everything they can think of that's popular into this movie without considering if it would help the story. It'd be like the MCU doing one movie combining Civil War and Age of Apocalypse without trying to make them work together. They would just feel forced, and the stories would end up not being justified.
Together, we will cleanse the earth.
This doesn't have to end in a fight, Tony.
Everything they've built will fall!
What the hell is that?
It's cherry.
Lois Lane has a subplot where she's tracking down a bullet that was shot into her book. This subplot goes nowhere and is insanely illogical. She takes it to General Swanwick, who is able to tell her that it's a bullet linked to LexCorp.
The bullet?
The metal was developed by a private company,
What company?
LexCorp.
So when Lex Luthor commits crimes, he uses specific bullets that can be traced back to him. But anyways, her investigation is just a time dump. It seems like it should be what sends Luthor to prison, but that's never established. And I think unleashing a cave troll onto the world would be enough to send him to prison anyway.
Oh, shit.
It's cherry.
Easter eggs and callbacks have hurt comic book movies, making them feel weighed down in universe building, sacrificing the current movie in favor of promoting future movies. Batman v Superman perhaps has the worst Easter eggs ever. Some of it's in the form of emails being checked by Wonder Woman, which is just as stupid as it sounds. But what makes it even worse is that this comes right before the big titular battle of the whole damn movie. It's like the whole movie stops just to have Wonder Woman check her email and show us QuickTime files for the teaser trailers for the next 3 solo movies. This email checking bit would have been forgivable and possibly even cool if it was put in mid or post credits, but just doesn't work in the middle of the movie, especially at such a pivotal part. It finally feels like we might get to a good part of this slow and boring movie, and just suddenly we take a few minutes out to sell some other movies. It's perhaps the worst usage by email ever that doesn't involve Hillary Clinton.
My emails are so boring.
It's cherry.
Batman's dreams seem like they should be a subplot in this movie. They serve either one of 2 purposes: to make sure we know Batman's mother's name and that he grieves for his parents, or to give us Easter eggs for upcoming movies. The whole desert scene that I assume is supposed to be Apocalypse doesn't even feel like it's in the right movie. It's like this few-minute intermission interrupting the regular program. Then it's immediately followed by another dream sequence where the Flash is warning Bruce of some future event, probably injustice. I don't remotely understand this scene. Oh, I know the Flash does time travel stuff fairly often, but I'm not aware of him traveling back into someone's dream. That would be a new one. I would get it if it wasn't a dream sequence, but the fact that it's one tells me it's completely filler information. And the last thing a bloated movie like this needs is filler.
Things are more moderner than before. Bigger, and yet smaller.
This movie treats the audience as if they're stupid or at least have no noteworthy memory. It's constantly flashing back to previous scenes in the movie, reminding us of things that we saw just a couple of hours earlier.
Why did you say that name?
One of my biggest gripes with the movie U.S. Marshals is how they feel the need to flash back to a scene when they made such a big deal of that scene when it first played. And they do the same type of thing here, except they do it more than once. It's ridiculous. It bugged me when they did this in The Punisher, and it's far, far worse in this movie. Was this movie made with the guy from Memento as the intended audience?
You don't remember me.
I'm sorry, I should have explained. I have this...
You did explain, Lenny.
It's Jerry.
This isn't a complaint I throw at a lot of movies, especially a comic book movie. A certain degree of stupidity is expected. In fact, the good ones can be smart despite the stupidity inherent with the genre.
Looks uncomfortable. It gets kind of itchy. It rides up in the crotch a little bit, too.
I wouldn't consider Batman v Superman stupider than your average superhero fare, so why do I bring it up? I bring it up because this movie acts like it's so smart. It likes to bring up the political implications of Superman suddenly existing.
We're talking about a being whose very existence challenges our own sense of priority in the universe.
Just look at the text at the beginning. A being that would likely throw almost all religions into chaos. And they do a great job of handling the idea of a super powerful being appearing within humanity.
The Superman exists, and he is American.
In Watchmen.
Even though they're like, to the rest of the world, maybe those guys, Night Owl or Dr. Man aren't as famous as Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. To me, because I love that book so much, they are. And so now when you sort of switch that, take that aesthetic or that sort of those sensibilities and really focus them now on the actual, like, the big three.
I think I figured out why Superman and Batman are so butchered. It's because Zack Snyder is trying to force Superman and Batman to be characters from Watchmen. The most obvious one being how he's trying to make Superman into some sort of Dr. Manhattan.
We, as a population on this planet, have been looking for a savior. 90% of people believe in a higher power, and every religion believes in some sort of messianic figure. And when this savior character actually comes to Earth, we want to make him abide by our rules.
I never said the Superman exists and he is American. What I said was, God exists, and he is American. Now, if you begin to feel an intense and crushing feeling of religious terror at the concept, don't be alarmed. That indicates only that you are still sane.
And the same can actually be said for Batman. The reason why Batman kills isn't by some by-proxy rule or because of the Dark Knight Returns, like Zack Snyder tries to say. He would at most be killing one person, and it'd be the Joker, who is still alive in this universe for some goddamn reason.
Oh, I'm not gonna kill you. I'm just gonna hurt you. Really, really bad.
But anyways, Batman kills in this movie because Rorschach killed in Watchmen. He's trying to make Batman Rorschach.
I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
This movie references many of the themes of Watchmen, but that's all it does. It references them. It doesn't share the themes of Watchmen. To have a theme in the movie, it has to play a role in the story. Here, it's just brought up in random clips and interviews. You need more than just dialogue to actually have a theme. And yes, dialogue can be a tool to help get a theme across. But you can't just have it sporadically scattered throughout your movie and say, there you go, that's your theme. It doesn't work that way. I have no problem throwing out a political joke at Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton's expense, but you can't look at one joke and say that's the theme of the video. It's just one moment in the video. Just like in Batman v Superman, they bring up the idea of Superman being a super powerful being, having an influence on our culture, but they really don't do anything with it outside of that, other than have Batman act like a complete and total asshole.
Do you plead? You will.
I'm an asshole. He's an asshole. I'm an asshole.
This iteration of Superman is supremely flawed as a character. He has shown a willingness to kill humans easily without a second thought if he thinks it'll be for the greater good. Sometimes it's through his actions fighting enemies that people are endangered by him, but sometimes he just straight up commits murder. And yes, I know Clark says he didn't kill anyone, but he throws the terrorist through at least 2 solid walls at a speed likely close to that of sound. Even if the terrorist survives that, it's through no action of Superman, who clearly didn't care if he took a human life. And that's what's most troubling. I couldn't care less if a terrorist is killed in this movie. He's a terrorist and a fictional character, but it is bothersome that Superman cares so little about a human life. He could easily save Lois without killing anyone here. He appears to be burdened throughout this movie. Some say he has too much power to decide who lives and dies. And when he kills so willingly, they have a right to ask that question. Superman is so strong, killing a human involves all the effort a human would put into tearing paper. If he doesn't want people to fear him, he should not act all godlike in front of them. Maybe save the flood victims without hovering them first. Maybe don't kill anyone unless you have no other choice. The line where Clark says he didn't kill anyone means nothing. It's a throwaway line forced in when it was clear that he killed a man. You can put after a whole bunch of scenes and it won't make his actions any less reckless, and the killing any less real.
I didn't kill those men. I didn't kill those men. I didn't kill those men. I didn't kill those men.
And I guess that was your accomplice and the wood chipper. And for what?
I didn't kill those men.
In a movie, you can't show something happening, then turn around and say it didn't happen. That's just sloppy filmmaking. Would it have been believable if at the end of Man of Steel, if someone stood up and said, "Thank God none of Metropolis was damaged"? That'd be an insane thing to say, but that's what they're trying to say here with Superman killing the terrorist.
Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them.
It's Cherry.
The Batman in this movie is not really Batman. He appears to be a detective, which is in line with his character, but when it comes to Superman, he has this massive blind spot. I could understand if this movie took place 2 weeks after Man of Steel. He simply wouldn't have the data about Superman, and he maybe wouldn't have the time to sit down and think about the situation. But this movie takes place a year and a half later. A year and a half of Superman saving people and using his powers for good. A year and a half where Batman could have sat down and thought out his plans towards Superman. They try to justify it with his 1% line.
He has the power to wipe out the entire human race, and if we believe there's even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty.
But that really doesn't work at all. Using similar logic, he should probably go out and destroy all the nuclear weapons in the world. But then he might run into Superman doing that and have to fight Nuclear Man, and the movie would get a lot worse, though it would be a lot funnier. But let's assume that Batman is right, that Superman needs to be taken down. So he gets his hands on kryptonite and fashions them into weapons. What weapons does he make? He makes a spear and some gas grenades. The gas grenades are a clear reference to Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. Problem is, in that story, Batman didn't want to kill Superman.
Don't worry, you'll survive. The kryptonite will work its way out of your lungs soon enough. I want you to remember the one man who beat you.
Here, the grenades work exactly the same, but I guess he had no other opportunity to make kryptonite bullets and just shoot him with those. Oh, wait a minute. But his plan was to kill him with a far more advanced weapon than bullets. He made a spear.
You know, I have an urge to hold that.
That's exactly what it's for.
May I?
Please?
I find this very satisfying.
I know.
I like this.
I know.
And the only reason he made a spear is to reference Jesus. Again.
So where do you live?
Everywhere. All places. Hopefully inside you.
Batman made a spear of destiny to cut Superman with. The world's greatest detective can only reference other things in his attempt to kill Superman. Essentially, he's a good detective except when he goes after Superman. At that point, he becomes a moron. Sure, it seems like he thought it out, but he makes key mistakes. It feels like they want him to be so enraged he can't think straight on the matter, and that's how come something as simple as Superman saying the name Martha might jog him out of it.
You're letting him kill Martha!
But he created traps and weapons specific for this fight. Yet with all that time and preparation, something as basic as a trigger word can just snap him out of it?
Why did you say that name?
It makes no sense by any stretch of the imagination.
One little mistake.
Before I drop Batman, I want to look at Batman's kills in this movie. Has Batman killed before? Yes, he actually killed quite a bit in Tim Burton's 1989 Batman, but the difference between that movie and this movie is that movie is actually entertaining. Here, Batman's kills are on a whole nother level. Snyder references The Dark Knight Returns as his inspiration for Batman killing people.
You know, in the Frank Miller comic book that I reference, you know, he kills all the time, right? Like he's constantly, there's a great shot. Basically the scene there's a scene taken from the graphic novel where he busts through the wall and he takes the guy's machine gun and the guy's going, I'll kill her, I promise, I swear it. And he's like, I believe you. I took that little vignette from a scene in Dark Knight Returns. At the end of that, he shoots the guy right between the eyes with the machine gun, you know, one shot. And, of course, I went to the gas tank.
I have to ask if he ever read that book. As far as I can tell, Batman only kills once in this story, and that death is debatable. The death I'm referring to is when he breaks the Joker's neck. He does it so that Joker doesn't die, which is why it's debatable. However, I do consider it a kill since he's absolutely clear in his plan to end the Joker whatever means necessary.
All the people I've murdered by letting you live.
I never kept count.
I did.
He was aiming to paralyze him, but in such a way that if he messes up slightly, the Joker dies. But that's literally it. The closest Batman comes to killing in the book that Snyder draws the greatest inspiration from.
I tried to do it like by proxy. He'd shoot the car that they're in, the car would blow up, or the grenade would go off in the guy's hand or whatever. Or he'd shoot the tank of the thing, and the guy pretty much lights his own tank with the thing. So I perceive it as not him killing directly, but by sort of, if the bad guys are associated with the thing that happens to blow up, that's not really, he would say that that's not really my problem, you know, like they shouldn't have been around that machine gun. What's that?
It's like manslaughter.
Yeah, a little more like manslaughter than actual murder.
Yeah.
Intent is the difference between manslaughter and murder. Killing a person with intent is murder. Quite frankly, the writing for this Batman bounces between good Batman, moron Batman, and homicidal maniac Batman. The only good aspect to the character is Ben Affleck's solid performance. Everything else, at the very least, is inconsistent at best.
I would never kill somebody, not unless they piss me off.
It's Jerry.
So apparently Superman doesn't want us to think of him as American anymore. And really, why would we? I mean, aside from the red and blue costume and...
Jon Stewart is really stretching here. Superman's colors are red, yellow, and blue. Not quite the US's colors, but it's made worse because this Superman has such a dark tone to his outfit. He might have had a point with the outfit from the old movies, but not really here.
I don't know, fact that he has 1/3 of the USA's initials on his chest.
And 1/3 of the USA on his outfit? That's literally one letter. That's meaningless. Hell, if he wanted to represent the country with one letter, Captain America would have told him he picked the wrong one.
Where's my helmet?
I assume the only reason he's not wearing the Declaration of Independence as a cape is he thinks it's too on the nose.
I I seriously want to know who thought this would be a good version of Lex Luthor. The character historically has two incarnations. There's the super genius criminal mastermind with a somewhat goofy side that was best represented by Gene Hackman's portrayal.
What are those cat-like reflexes?
And there's the wealthy businessman super genius who does evil stuff, but he hides it using wealth, power, and influence. The people who could stop him legally just look the other way.
Relax, Lex. Applecore may have been illegal, but it was completely under the radar.
See that it stays that way. Scorch earth if you have to. LexCorp was never there.
This incarnation has never had a live-action, big-screen version, so it seems like the obvious one to go for. But instead, Batman v Superman went for a different, vastly stupider approach. First, they make him Lex Luthor Jr. and make it so he inherited his wealth.
Man on the marquee. No, don't believe it. My father named the company after himself. He was the Lex in front of the corp. How you doing?
Maybe their goal is to make a commentary on how people like Trump get into powerful positions just because of who their parents are.
Working for your money doesn't matter in your part of the world. It's whose crotch the doctor yanked you out of.
And while I prefer Lex Luthor, who's more of a self-made man who has an absolute moral vacuum and is willing to do anything to put himself in power, I do have to admit that most versions of the character aren't like that. Almost always, his father is a huge reason why Lex Luthor is wealthy. Although that father is usually named Lionel Luthor and not Lex Luthor Sr., which is a bizarre change. But you know what? Whatever. That's not even remotely the biggest problem with this Lex Luthor. The biggest problem with this Lex Luthor is that he's not intimidating at all, unless you find Jar Jar Binks intimidating.
You don't have to use a silver bullet. But if you forge one, well then, we don't have to depend upon the kindness of monsters.
You're thinking people gonna die?
I assume he's supposed to be intelligent in this movie, but there is no direct evidence of that. He just seems to magically know things. He knows Superman is Clark Kent, and Batman is Bruce Wayne, and we're never told how he knows that.
Superman, Batman.
What? Batman? That's not Batman. He's in a nice suit. No, and this is not Superman has perfect vision, whereas this man's in glasses.
Yeah,
What?
Look.
Oh my god. I feel like such an idiot. Of course it's him.
Yeah, I can see why you'd feel that way. It took me like 2 seconds to figure it out.
He also knows that Superman can't see through lead.
The inside of the chair was lined with lead. You couldn't stop it.
But since that has never been established in this universe yet, I have no idea how he could possibly know that. He also seems to know mixing his blood with Zod's body will somehow make some sort of creature, which, again, no idea how he would know that. But let's ignore his apparent omniscience on certain facts. Let's look at how this villain is introduced. Generally speaking, when a villain is introduced, you'll see how they are a threat to the hero in some way. Just looking at alternate Lex Luthors, the 1978 version was shown to have a mansion hidden beneath the city. This showed that he was incredibly resourceful, and that's how he'll be a threat to the hero. In Superman Returns, we see how he's rebuilt his fortune by marrying a woman who died and left him his fortune. Not my favorite, but it does show his determination, and that's how he'll be a threat to the hero. In Batman v Superman, the only thing he does early that is noteworthy is he feeds a guy a Jolly Rancher.
It's cherry.
That's how he'll be a threat to the hero? In this universe, is Superman weak to cherry Jolly Ranchers? I could spend forever going over all the ways this Lex Luthor is easily the worst version of the character I've ever seen. I don't remotely understand how anyone put this character together and thought he could be in any way threatening. I don't look at a trust fund baby with probably ADHD and think, wow, that guy could be a threat to Superman.
Willem! What are you doing, Willem?
Looking for the hidden picture.
If you stare at these things long enough, you're supposed to see some kind of hidden three-dimensional picture.
I've been staring at this thing for a week now, from opening till closing, and I can't see a goddamn thing!
This movie is just terrible. I like Man of Steel, but I recognize its flaws. Batman v Superman had its work cut out for it. It had to be a good movie, and it also had to help the weak foundation of the DC Extended Universe that Man of Steel laid down. Sadly, Batman v Superman just shit into the foundation, leaving the DC Extended Universe much worse than it was before. Zack Snyder needed to bring his A-game to dispel all the haters. Frankly, only one person seemed to understand that the world would be against him and that he needed to bring up his game intensely and bring his A-game to the table. That was Ben Affleck. I was certain he would suck, and while his character was written terribly, his performance was very good. I think he could do a good Batman, and hopefully one day he will get a chance to play him. And while most of the performances were very poorly written, the actors all did the best they could do with what they had. It's consistent throughout the cast, to the well-reasoned character Jeremy Irons' Alfred Pennyworth.
But he is not our enemy.
The most idiotic Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor.
Ow! Wow, that is a good grip. You should not pick a fight with this person.
I do feel like Eisenberg is fine here. Just everything about the character is shit that Marlon Brando himself couldn't make a good character out of it. Ding, 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 ding. Zack Snyder really doesn't seem to understand any of these characters. Superman, Batman, and Lex Luthor all diverge so much from their comic book versions, and I know someone's typing some comment telling me about some Golden Age Batman or some obscure variation of the characters. When you have characters that are this old, you can find random comic books of them doing most anything. I'm talking about the versions of these characters that people are familiar with, the versions that are most popular in the comic books, the versions that are debatably the best versions. Superman was made too much like Batman, so to combat that, Batman was made a super extreme version of himself. Lex Luthor was made to be more like the Joker. Their whole goal with Man of Steel was to give Superman the Dark Knight treatment, and the DC Extended Universe seems to be set in a world that makes the Dark Knight trilogy seem light and fun.
Well, you look nervous. Is it the scars? You want to know how I got them? Come here.
Zack Snyder was a great choice to direct movies like 300 and Watchmen. Those were complete stories, and he's shown skill to accurately translate comic books nearly directly to the screen. But once he starts tinkering with stories, we get stuff like Sucker Punch, which is visually a beautiful movie, but from a story standpoint, it's complete garbage. A quote about J.J. Abrams when I was researching Star Trek 2009 seems relevant here.
JJ called me up and basically said, Paramount is sort of looking to reinvigorate the franchise. Could we make it cool? You know, which is essentially all conversations with JJ sort of gravitate towards this inevitable question is, can we make it cool?
It seems like Abrams and Snyder are very similar in this respect, but where they vary is how they use these cool things. To his credit, Abrams and company seem to come up with cool ideas, then ask, how can this benefit the story? Whereas Snyder and company seem to ask, how can the story benefit this cool idea? The most obvious example is with Superman hovering over the houses. This is a guy who doesn't seem to like the attention he's getting and just wants to do good. But this scene shows us a man posing like a god. In a vacuum, you assume he wants to be seen as a god. Sure, the scene looks beautiful, but it's fighting against the character they're trying to portray. It's clear Snyder really doesn't care for characters at all. Just look at how Jimmy Olsen is treated. Yes, he's a minor Superman character, but he's easily more famous than many other superheroes like Ant-Man, Deadpool, Doctor Strange, and the Guardians of the Galaxy. Most everyone in the world knows who Jimmy Olsen is, yet since Zack Snyder can't think of a way to use the character in this world, he kills him off. He doesn't even think of a way to kill him off that in any way contributes to the story. You could cut him entirely and have the same exact movie. Snyder was so busy jamming him into this movie, he didn't think maybe he should just leave him out until they have a good idea of how to use the character. And now he's dead, and his character served absolutely no purpose. It's clear Snyder killing Jimmy at the beginning of the movie was only there to symbolize how he's planning on butchering all the other characters in this movie. Batman v Superman has nothing to say. This isn't something I usually say against a movie, especially a superhero movie, but it parades around acting like it has some deeper message to the thing. There's nothing here. The movie is a bloated mess. It's as hollow as it gets with none of the fun that can justify a hollow movie. I said in my knee-jerk reaction that this film is better than The Amazing Spider-Man 2. With further analysis, I can't say this is accurate. At least Amazing Spider-Man 2 wasn't an unnecessarily dark movie that was trying and failing to be a think piece. The only reason I consider these two movies to be equal is that none of the performances in Batman v Superman are bad.
Say hello to Alexei Sinzevich!
I give Batman v Superman a 2 out of 10. As for the Ultimate Edition, is it better? Yes and no. Through most of this video, I'm pretty much just talking about the Ultimate Edition, and the half hour actually fleshes out Luthor's plan a bit and largely makes the Senate bombing logical rather than another crazy action committed by Luthor. Unfortunately, you feel that half hour. Sure, the theatrical version was insane with its near nonsensical editing style, while the Ultimate does flow better, but it's not an entertaining flow. It's a dry and boring consistency. So if your biggest issue with Batman v Superman is that Lex Luthor's plan needed to be a bit more realized, or you wanted more Clark Kent, then you'll like the Ultimate Edition. But if your biggest issues were the terrible characters and the raw pretentiousness of the movie, then you'll find no solace here. I give the Ultimate Edition a 3 out of 10.
Panel sends us somewhere we don't think we should go? What if there's somewhere we need to go and they don't let us? We may not be perfect, but the safest hands are still our own.
If we don't do this now, it's going to be done to us later.
Hey, if you like this video, please make sure to hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe. That helps me out a lot. And if you really love this video, consider visiting my Patreon page.